There are two kinds of 3 a.m. texts, drunk dials and the kind that make you wish you were dead. Guess which one I got? My phone buzzed on the nightstand like an angry wasp, dragging me from dreams of better days. The blue glow burned my retinas as I squinted at the screen, and there it was, a message from my loving wife of 12 years. I'm at the Harborview Hotel with Damian. If you care, prove it. I stared at those words for a full minute, letting them sink in like poison through my veins. Vanessa had finally done it. After months of working late and girls' nights out, she'd thrown down the gauntlet. The funny thing? She expected me to come running, to make some grand gesture, to fight for her like some lovesick teenager. Instead, I typed back, "Proven, I don't." Then I did something that would change everything. I forwarded that hotel booking confirmation. Yeah, she was stupid enough to leave it in our shared email, straight to Damian Kemp's wife, Samantha. My name is Eli Graves, but everyone calls me Eli. I'm 44, built like the ex-Marine I am, and I run Graves Marine Services down at the harbor. It's not glamorous work, fixing boats, hauling them in and out of the water, dealing with rich weekend warriors who think they know port from starboard. But it pays the bills and keeps me busy enough to ignore the fact that my marriage had been circling the drain for the past 2 years. Vanessa, on the other hand, sells million-dollar waterfront properties to those same rich weekend warriors. She's beautiful in that high-maintenance way that costs a fortune. Blonde highlights, designer clothes, yoga classes, and a social media presence that makes her look like she's living her best life. The reality was different. She'd become entitled, demanding, and apparently unfaithful. Damian Kemp was her latest obsession. Mid-30s, flashy crypto entrepreneur who drove a white Tesla and rented the penthouse at Harborview Towers. The kind of guy who wore designer jeans to the marina and complained about the smell of fish. Vanessa had been showing him properties for months, which apparently included showing him our bedroom while I was at work. I'd suspected something was wrong when she started working weekends and coming home with that guilty flush on her cheeks. The final clue came when I installed a smart home security system, ostensibly for protection, but really because I wanted to know what was happening in my own house. The footage I'd found made my stomach turn. Not just Vanessa and Damian using our bed like a cheap motel, but her friends, Trina Walsh and Maddie Chen, helping coordinate their little rendezvous. Trina, the local Instagram influencer with her fake smile and designer handbags, had been covering for Vanessa, creating alibis and even filming TikTok videos in my living room, while my wife was upstairs with her boyfriend. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a video message from an unknown number. I opened it and nearly choked on my own laughter. There was Samantha Kemp, all 5'10" of furious wife, dragging both Vanessa and Damian out of the Harborview Hotel by their ears. The parking lot was lit up like a movie set, and Samantha was screaming loud enough to wake half the town. "You want to play house with my husband, you plastic doll? Let's see how you like playing it in public." Vanessa was trying to cover herself with a hotel bathrobe, her perfect hair a tangled mess, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Damian, the tough crypto millionaire, was stumbling around in his boxers, begging his wife to calm down. But Samantha wasn't done. She grabbed Vanessa's phone and started reading their text messages out loud, her voice carrying across the parking lot like a town crier announcing the news. "Oh, here's a good one!" Eli's working late again. "Come over and bring the champagne." "And this one. Your wife called, but don't worry. I told her you were looking at the Henderson property." A small crowd had gathered, and I could see people holding up their phones, recording everything. By morning, this would be all over social media. Vanessa's carefully curated image was about to become a viral meme. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and settled into my recliner, watching the show unfold on my phone screen. This was better than cable TV. The video ended with hotel security escorting all 3 of them off the property, and Samantha throwing Damian's clothes out of her car window as she drove away. Vanessa was left standing in the parking lot in a bathrobe, holding her heels, looking around desperately for a way home. My phone rang. Vanessa. Eli, I can explain everything. This isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you're standing in a hotel parking lot in your underwear after getting caught cheating with a married man. But hey, maybe I'm missing something. Don't be sarcastic. I need you to come pick me up. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. You need a lot of things, Vanessa. A ride home isn't one of them. Try calling an Uber. Eli, please, we can work this out. It was a mistake. The only mistake here was me thinking you had any decency left. Don't come home tonight, or tomorrow. We'll talk when I'm ready to talk. I hung up and turned off my phone. Then, I walked to my basement workshop and started planning. If Vanessa wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real player looked like. The thing about running a marina is that you learn things about people. You see who treats their crew well and who screams at teenagers for not washing their boat fast enough. You learn who pays their bills on time and who tries to stiff you for work already completed. Most importantly, you build a network of people who know things, see things, and remember things. Big Mike Torino had been working for me for 8 years. He was 6'4", weighed about 250, and looked like he could bench press a small car. He was also loyal as a golden retriever and had a memory like a steel trap. If something happened within 5 miles of the harbor, Mike knew about it. Mrs. Helen Larkin lived next door and had been watching our neighborhood like a hawk for the past 30 years. She knew when the mailman was running late, when teenagers were cutting through her garden, and definitely when my wife was sneaking out for her afternoon appointments. Helen was 78 years old and sharp as a tack. She also made the best apple pie in Maine and had a grandson who worked for the state police. Detective Pete Morrison was that grandson. We'd served together in Afghanistan, and he'd saved my life during a particularly nasty firefight in Helmand Province. He was off duty more often than on, spent too much time at Mickey's bar, and had a talent for making people very uncomfortable when he wanted to. Then there was my cousin Jax, the family tech genius who'd gone a little paranoid after spending too many years in corporate IT. He lived in a converted warehouse surrounded by computer screens and conspiracy theories, but he could hack into anything with a Wi-Fi connection. These were my people. Not the country club crowd that Vanessa had been trying to impress for years. Not the real estate agents with their fake smiles and designer shoes. These were the people who had my back when things got ugly. And things were about to get very ugly indeed. I spent the rest of the night going through our security footage, making notes, and planning my next moves. By dawn, I had a comprehensive timeline of Vanessa's affair, complete with dates, times, and video evidence. I also had something more valuable, a complete picture of everyone who had helped her, covered for her, and lied to me. Trina Walsh had been in my house 17 times over the past 3 months, always when I was at work, always with her phone out recording content for her social media empire. She'd been using my living room as a backdrop for her lifestyle brand, while my wife was upstairs betraying our marriage. Maddie Chen, the junior agent at Vanessa's real estate office, had been the lookout. She'd call or text warnings when clients showed up unexpectedly or when I left work early. She'd even helped coordinate schedules, making sure Damian and Vanessa had plenty of uninterrupted time. The worst part was the group chat I'd found on Vanessa's laptop. Months of messages between her, Trina, and Maddie, planning their deception, mocking me, and laughing about how clueless I was. They'd given me a nickname, Captain Oblivious. Well, Captain Oblivious was about to show them what a real military operation looked like. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove straight to Mickey's bar. It was barely 10 a.m., but Mickey served coffee strong enough to wake the dead, and I needed to think. Big Mike was already there, nursing a cup and reading the local paper. He looked up when I walked in, took one look at my face, and folded the newspaper. "Boss, you look like someone ran over your dog. What's eating you?" I slid into the booth across from him and ordered coffee. Then I told him everything. Mike listened without interrupting, his face getting darker with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "So what's the plan?" he asked finally. I'm going to destroy them. All of them. But I'm going to do it legally, publicly, and thoroughly. Mike grinned, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Count me in. What do you need? First, I need you to take a drive past the Harborview Hotel. Damian's Tesla should still be in the parking lot. White Model S, license plate Crypto 1. And when I find it, we're going to relocate it. Bring the flatbed truck. Mike's grin got wider. I love it when rich boys leave their toys where they don't belong. While Mike went car hunting, I made my second call. Mrs. Larkin answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting by the phone. Eli, dear, I saw the commotion last night. Are you all right? I'm fine, Mrs. Larkin, but I need to ask you some questions about what you might have seen over the past few months. Oh, I've seen plenty. That wife of yours has been busier than a bee in springtime. Would you like to come over for coffee? I have a notebook. God bless Helen Larkin. She actually kept a notebook. An hour later, I was sitting in her immaculate kitchen, reading through 3 months of detailed observations. Helen had recorded everything: arrival times, departure times, license plates, and even descriptions of what people were wearing. She'd noted when Vanessa left the house in her yoga clothes and came back in business attire. She'd written down the times when strange cars appeared in our driveway and how long they stayed. I didn't want to pry, dear, but when someone's sneaking around at all hours, a person notices. Mrs. Larkin, this is incredible. You should have been a detective. She beamed with pride. My Pete always said I had a good eye for details. Speaking of Pete, he stopped by yesterday asking about you. I think he's worried. Actually, I was hoping to talk to him. Is he around? He's working a double shift, but he'll be at Mickey's tonight around 8. You know how he likes to unwind after work. I spent the rest of the afternoon at the marina, going through our security footage with Jax. My cousin had driven down from Portland with a laptop bag full of equipment and a conspiracy theorist's enthusiasm for digital surveillance. Dude, your wife is either really stupid or really arrogant, he said, pointing at the screen. Look at this. She's literally posing for selfies in your living room while her boyfriend's car is in your driveway. The footage was damning. Trina Walsh had been treating my house like her personal photo studio, creating content for her Instagram account while Vanessa and Damian were upstairs. In one particularly galling video, Trina was showing off her morning routine in my kitchen, complete with my coffee maker and my breakfast dishes. Can you get into their social media accounts? I asked. Jax looked offended. Can I get into their accounts? Eli, I once hacked into the Pentagon just to see if I could. These suburban social media queens are using passwords like password123 and TrinaBabe 2022. It's embarrassing. Do it. I want everything. Text messages, DMs, photos, videos, browser history, all of it. You got it, cuz. This is going to be fun. While Jax worked his digital magic, I reviewed our business security footage. Graves Marine Services had cameras covering the entire marina, and I'd been recording everything for insurance purposes. What I found made my blood boil. Damian had been coming to the marina for weeks, not as a customer, but to scout locations for his romantic rendezvous. I had footage of him and Vanessa meeting in the parking lot, kissing by the docks, and even using one of my clients' boats for their afternoon trysts. They'd been conducting their affair practically under my nose, using my own business as their personal love nest. But I also found something else. Damian had been taking photos of boats, equipment, and facilities. At first I thought it was just typical rich guy behavior, taking pictures to show off to his friends. But looking closer, I realized he was documenting everything systematically, like he was planning something. I called Mike. Where are you with that Tesla? Parked it right in the middle of the boatyard, boss. Blocked it in real nice with the 2 biggest trawlers we got. Also might have left the windows down during high tide. Funny how that works. Any problems? Nah. Hotel security said it was abandoned property after 24 hours. We're just providing storage services. Good. Now I need you to do something else. Check our insurance files for any inquiries about our coverage, our equipment values, anything like that. You think Pretty Boy was casing us? I think Pretty Boy is about to learn that some people fight back. By 6 p.m., Jax had cracked into their digital lives like a kid opening Christmas presents. What we found was a treasure trove of evidence, stupidity, and pure, malicious intent. The group chat between Vanessa, Trina, and Maddie was worse than I'd imagined. They hadn't just been planning the affair, they'd been planning to destroy me financially. Vanessa had been feeding Damian information about my business, my clients, and my assets. She'd even given him copies of our insurance policies and financial records, but the real kicker was their exit strategy. Vanessa wasn't just cheating. She was planning to divorce me and take everything. The messages showed her consulting with lawyers, hiding assets, and even discussing ways to make me look unstable or abusive in court. Look at this one, Jack said, pointing to a message from 3 weeks ago. Trina's telling Vanessa to start documenting erratic behavior and suggesting she should accidentally get bruised before filing for divorce. I felt something cold and dangerous settle in my chest. They weren't just betraying me, they were trying to frame me. Keep digging, I told Jax. I want to know everything about Damian's business, his finances, his legal troubles, everything. Already on it. And boss? This guy's got more red flags than a Soviet parade. His crypto business is basically a Ponzi scheme. He's got 3 different LLCs with overlapping addresses, and he's been borrowing money from some very unfriendly people. At 8 p.m. sharp, I walked into Mickey's bar and found Pete Morrison drowning, his sorrows in whiskey and beer. He looked up when I sat down, and his cop instincts kicked in immediately. Eli, heard you had some excitement last night. Pete, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. If someone was planning to frame me for domestic abuse, what would that look like? Pete's expression went from casual to deadly serious in about 2 seconds. Why are you asking? I showed him the messages. Pete read through them twice, his jaw getting tighter with each line. Jesus Christ, Eli. They're talking about staging evidence, creating false documentation, even getting photographs of fake injuries. This isn't just adultery. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. What can I do about it? Officially? Not much until they actually do something. Unofficially? Pete finished his whiskey and looked around the bar. You didn't hear this from me. But if someone was planning to ruin my life, I might want to get ahead of it. Document everything, create my own evidence, make sure there are witnesses to my behavior. And if I wanted to return the favor? Pete grinned, and for a moment I could see the soldier he used to be. Well, the law says a man has a right to defend himself and his property. It also says that fraud, conspiracy, and defamation are serious crimes. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. I was hoping you'd say that. What do you need? I need you to be visible. I need people to see that I'm cooperating with law enforcement, that I'm stable and rational. And I need you to be around when things start getting interesting. When's that going to be? I smiled, and it felt like the first genuine smile I'd had in months. Tomorrow's the 4th of July festival. Vanessa's got a booth set up to promote her real estate business. Trina's planning to do a live stream from the event, and Damian's supposed to be the guest speaker at the business owner's breakfast. Pete raised his empty glass in a mock toast to the 4th of July. May it be memorable. The 4th of July festival in our town is serious business. Main Street gets closed off, vendors set up booths, selling everything from fried dough to handmade crafts, and the whole community comes out to celebrate. It's also the biggest gossip event of the year, where everyone sees everyone, and news travels faster than wildfire. I woke up early and drove to the marina to check on our relocated Tesla. It was exactly where Mike had left it, wedged between 2 40-foot fishing boats like a white metal sandwich. The high tide had done its work, the interior was soaked, and I could smell the distinctive aroma of low tide and dead fish from 50 feet away. "Morning, boss," Mike called out from the dock. "Funny thing about leaving your car windows down near the water. All kinds of things can get inside." I peered through the Tesla's sunroof and nearly gagged. Mike had been busy. The car was full of fish guts, seaweed, and what looked like the contents of several lobster traps. The white leather interior was now a Jackson Pollock painting done in various shades of marine decay. "Mike, you're an artist." "Just doing my civic duty, boss." Cleaning up abandoned vehicles. My phone buzzed. Damian calling for the 5th time that morning. "Graves, where's my car? I know you took it." "Damian, good morning. I have no idea what you're talking about. Have you tried calling the police? Maybe someone stole it." "Don't play games with me. I want my car back now, or I'm calling my lawyer." "You should definitely call your lawyer. In fact, you should probably call several lawyers. You're going to need them." I hung up and turned to Mike. "Time for phase 2. You ready for this?" "Boss, I've been ready since you told me what these people did to you. Let's go make some noise." The festival parade was scheduled to start at noon, with floats representing local businesses, community groups, and civic organizations. What most people didn't know was that Graves Marine Services had entered a float at the last minute, and we'd been working on it all week in Mike's garage. Our float was a masterpiece of maritime theater. We'd built a mock boat deck on a trailer, complete with fishing nets, lobster traps, and nautical flags. In the center, prominently displayed, was Damian's Tesla, elevated on a hydraulic platform like a trophy fish. But the real genius was in the audio system. Jax had rigged up a professional-grade sound system connected to a laptop, and we had a very special playlist prepared for the occasion. At 11:30, we drove our float to the staging area behind the fire station. The other participants were putting finishing touches on their displays: the Rotary Club's Spirit of America theme, the high school marching band's patriotic uniforms, the local real estate agents' Home of the Brave banner. Vanessa was there with her colleagues, wearing a red, white, and blue dress and a smile that looked painted on. She saw our float and her face went white. "What the hell is that?" she hissed, pointing at the Tesla. "That's our tribute to local entrepreneurship," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We're celebrating the innovative spirit of our community's business leaders." Trina Walsh was there too, live streaming the pre-parade festivities for her followers. She had her phone out, panning across the various floats when she spotted our display. "Oh my God, you guys, this is so awkward," she said to her camera. "There's literally a car on that boat trailer. Like, who does that?" "Someone with a sense of humor," I called out. "Hey, Trina, make sure you get our good side." The parade started promptly at noon, with the high school marching band leading the way down Main Street. We were positioned about halfway back, right behind the Chamber of Commerce float, and just ahead of the volunteer fire department. The crowd was thick along both sides of the street, with families spread out on blankets and kids running around with sparklers. Everyone was in a good mood, waving flags and cheering for the participants. Our float got some curious looks as we made our way down the street, but it wasn't until we reached the main viewing area in front of the town hall that things got interesting. That's when I gave Mike the signal, and he hit the button on our sound system. The first thing that came out of the speakers was Vanessa's voice, crystal clear and unmistakable. "Eli's working late again tonight. Why don't you come over around 8? I'll leave the back door unlocked." The crowd went quiet, trying to figure out what they were hearing. Then Damian's voice. "What if he comes home early? I don't want to deal with that jarhead husband of yours. Don't worry about Eli. He's completely clueless. Besides, Trina's going to post some videos from the house today, so if anyone asks, I was doing a collaboration with her." The silence was deafening. 1,000 people were listening to my wife and her boyfriend planning their affair, broadcast in high-definition audio from the middle of our 4th of July parade. But we weren't done. The next recording was even better. A phone conversation between Vanessa and Trina discussing their plan to frame me for domestic abuse. "You need to be smart about this, Van." A few bruises, some photos, maybe a recording of him yelling. make it look like he's losing control. But what if he doesn't yell? Eli never raises his voice. Then we'll have to get creative. Maddie knows a guy who can Photoshop some injuries. The important thing is documenting a pattern of erratic behavior. The crowd was no longer silent. People were talking, pointing, pulling out their phones to record. I could see Vanessa pushing through the crowd, trying to reach our float, her face red with rage and embarrassment. The final audio clip was the cherry on top. Damian and Vanessa discussing their plan to destroy my business and take my assets in the divorce. Once we get the insurance money from the marina accident, we can disappear to the Cayman Islands. I've already got the accounts set up. What about Eli? Won't he fight the divorce? Not if he's in jail for domestic assault, or better yet, if he has an unfortunate accident at work. Marine equipment can be very dangerous. That last line hit the crowd like a physical blow. These weren't just cheaters, they were talking about insurance fraud and possibly worse. The parade had essentially stopped. Our float was surrounded by people, some cheering, some booing, everyone recording everything on their phones. I could see Pete Morrison in the crowd, wearing his off-duty clothes, but with his hand resting on his concealed weapon. Vanessa finally reached our float, screaming over the crowd noise, "Turn that off! Turn it off right now." I grabbed the microphone connected to our sound system and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize for interrupting our beautiful 4th of July celebration. My name is Eli Graves, and I've just learned some disturbing things about people I trusted. I thought the community should know what kind of people they're dealing with." The crowd erupted. Some people were cheering, others were shouting questions, and everyone was trying to get closer to see what would happen next. That's when Damian made his big mistake. He pushed through the crowd and tried to climb onto our float, screaming about lawsuits and defamation. "You can't do this! This is harassment! I'll have you arrested." Mike stepped forward, all 6'4" and 250 pounds of him, and looked down at Damian like he was something unpleasant he'd found on his shoe. "Sir, you need to step away from our float. This is private property." "That's my car! You stole my car!" "That car was abandoned on hotel property and towed for storage fees. You want it back? You can pay the bill." Damian tried to push past Mike, which was like a chihuahua trying to intimidate a grizzly bear. Mike didn't even have to try. He just stood there while Damian bounced off him and fell backward into the crowd. The whole thing was being recorded by dozens of phones, and I could see people already uploading videos to social media. By tonight, this would be viral. But the best part was still coming. As Damian picked himself up off the ground, covered in spilled beer and cotton candy, his wife Samantha appeared at the edge of the crowd. She was carrying a manila envelope and wearing an expression that could have melted steel. "Damian!" she called out, her voice cutting through the noise like a sword. "I've been looking for you." Damian froze like a deer in headlights. "Sam, I can explain this." She pulled a stack of papers from the envelope and threw them at him. "Divorce papers, and this, another stack of papers. Fraud investigation from the SEC, and this, a final stack. Eviction notice from your precious penthouse." The crowd was eating this up like it was better than fireworks. Samantha wasn't done, though. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, addressing the crowd like a prosecutor in court, "I want you all to know what kind of man my soon-to-be ex-husband is. He's a cheater, a liar, and a fraud. His crypto business is a scam, his assets are fake, and he's been stealing from investors for 2 years. She turned back to Damian, who was standing there with his mouth hanging open like a landed fish. "Oh, and honey, your girlfriend isn't the only one he's been sleeping with. I found messages from at least 6 other women. Congratulations, Vanessa, you're part of a very large club." That was the final straw for Vanessa. She lunged at Samantha, screaming something about lies and jealousy, but Pete Morrison materialized out of the crowd and caught her before she could start a fight. "Ma'am, I think you need to calm down," Pete said in his cop voice, showing his badge. "Why don't we all take a step back and let the parade continue?" But the parade was effectively over. The crowd was more interested in the real-life drama unfolding in front of them than any organized celebration. People were taking sides, sharing gossip, and generally having the time of their lives. I grabbed the microphone one more time. Folks, I want to thank you for your patience today. Sometimes the truth needs to come out, even if the timing isn't perfect. I hope you'll continue to support local businesses, the honest ones anyway. And remember, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. The crowd cheered, and I could see people nodding in agreement. These were my neighbors, my customers, people I'd known for years. They'd seen the evidence, heard the recordings, and drawn their own conclusions. As we drove our float back to the marina, I could see the aftermath spreading through the festival like ripples on water. Groups of people were clustered around phones, watching and rewatching the videos. Vanessa's real estate booth was surrounded by angry-looking clients. Trina had stopped live streaming and was trying to disappear into the crowd. The revolution had begun. The festival aftermath was everything I'd hoped for and more. By evening, videos of our parade float were trending on TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. Someone had created a hashtag, #Tesla float, and it was being shared thousands of times. But the real damage was happening behind the scenes, in the digital realm where Jax was working his magic. I found him at the marina that evening, surrounded by laptops and energy drink cans, looking like a mad scientist in his natural habitat. "Dude, this is better than Christmas," he said, without looking up from his screens. "I've got access to everything, their social media accounts, their email, their cloud storage, even their dating app profiles." "Dating apps?" "Oh yeah, Damian's been busy. He's got profiles on 5 different apps, all with different ages and relationship statuses. And Vanessa? She's been shopping for husband number 2 for months." Jax pulled up a dating profile that made my stomach turn. There was my wife, describing herself as recently separated, and looking for someone financially stable and emotionally mature. The photos were taken in our house, in our bedroom, wearing clothes I'd bought her. "But here's the really good stuff," Jax continued, pulling up a new window. "Trina's been running a side business that her followers don't know about. She's been selling access to private information about her friends, including their addresses, schedules, and personal details." "What do you mean, selling access?" "Identity theft, basically. She's got a whole network of people who pay her for information they can use to steal identities, commit credit card fraud, that sort of thing. She's been using her social media presence as a front for criminal activity." This was bigger than I'd thought. These people weren't just cheaters and liars, they were criminals. "What about Damian's business?" "Pure Ponzi scheme. He's been taking money from new investors to pay returns to old investors and skimming about 60% off the top for himself. The SEC is already investigating, but they don't know about the offshore accounts yet." Jax showed me bank records, transaction histories, and email chains that painted a picture of systematic fraud. Damian had stolen nearly $2 million from investors, most of them elderly people looking for safe retirement investments. "Can you get this information to the authorities?" "Already done. I sent everything to the FBI, the SEC, and the State Attorney General's office. Anonymous tip, of course, but with enough detail that they'll have to investigate." "And Vanessa? Her real estate license is about to become a problem. Turns out she's been inflating property values, hiding defects from buyers, and taking kickbacks from inspectors. I've got emails proving she knew about structural problems in at least 12 properties she sold in the past year." I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed by the scope of their criminal activity. These weren't just personal betrayals. These were serious crimes that had hurt innocent people. "Jax, I need you to do something else. I want you to create a website, something that looks professional and legitimate. I want to publish everything we've found, but I want it organized and documented like a legal brief." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that these people have been hiding behind their public images for too long. It's time for some transparency." While Jax worked on the website, I drove over to Mrs. Larkin's house. She was waiting for me with fresh coffee and a plate of cookies, like she'd known I was coming. "Eli, dear, that was quite a show today." The whole neighborhood's talking about it. "Mrs. Larkin, I need to ask you something important. Have you noticed any unusual activity around here lately? Strange cars, people you don't recognize, anything that seemed off?" Her expression grew serious. "As a matter of fact, yes. There was a man here yesterday asking questions about you and Vanessa. Said he was from an insurance company, but something didn't feel right about him." She pulled out her notebook and flipped to a recent entry. "He was driving a black sedan, license plate number here, and he was asking very specific questions about your work schedule, your routines, whether you'd seemed stressed or angry lately." This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. They were building a case against me, creating a narrative that would support their fraud claims. "Did you talk to him?" "Oh, I talked to him all right. Told him you were the most reliable, even-tempered man I'd ever known. Said you'd been nothing but kind and respectful, even when that wife of yours was carrying on like a teenager. I don't think it was what he wanted to hear. Mrs. Larkin, you're a treasure. Did he say when he might be back?" "He said he might need to talk to more neighbors, get a complete picture. But Eli, I called my Pete after he left. Something about that man didn't sit right with me." "What did Pete say?" "He said to call him immediately if the man comes back. He also said to tell you that he's been asking around and there's no insurance investigation into you or your business. Whoever that man was, he wasn't from any insurance company." This was escalating faster than I'd expected. They weren't just planning to frame me, they were actively building their case. I spent the next hour with Mrs. Larkin, going through her observations and making copies of everything. She documented not just Vanessa's affair, but also the suspicious visitors, unusual phone calls, and changes in our household routine that I'd missed. "There's one more thing, dear," she said, as I was getting ready to leave. "That Trina woman was here this afternoon, right after the parade. She seemed very upset, kept looking around like she was afraid of something." "What did she want?" "She was asking if I'd seen the videos from today, if I knew how to make them go away. She offered me money to say I'd never seen anything unusual happening at your house." "What did you tell her?" Miss Larkin smiled, and for a moment I could see the steel beneath her grandmother exterior. "I told her that my eyesight was excellent, my memory was perfect, and my grandson was a police officer who didn't appreciate people trying to bribe witnesses." By the time I got back to the marina, Jax had the website ready. It was professional, well-organized, and devastating. He'd laid out the evidence like a prosecutor presenting a case, with sections for each person and each type of criminal activity. The Vanessa section included her real estate fraud, her adultery, and her plan to frame me for domestic abuse. The Damian section covered his Ponzi scheme, his multiple affairs, and his plan to destroy my business. The Trina section exposed her identity theft operation and her role in the conspiracy. But the masterpiece was the final section, the conspiracy. Jax had mapped out their entire plan, from the initial affair through the planned insurance fraud and my eventual destruction. It read like a crime novel, except everything was documented with emails, text messages, and recorded conversations. "This is incredible work, Jax. When do we go live?" "I was thinking tomorrow morning, right after the business owner's breakfast. Damian's supposed to give a speech about ethical entrepreneurship. Seems like good timing." I laughed, imagining Damian trying to talk about ethics while his world collapsed around him. "Perfect. But I want to add one more section. I want to include testimonials from people who've been hurt by these criminals, real victims, real stories. I can do that. I've already identified about 30 people who were defrauded by Damian's crypto scheme, and at least a dozen families who bought houses from Vanessa that had serious, undisclosed problems. Contact them. Tell them there's going to be a reckoning, and they'll have a chance to tell their stories." As I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not hope for reconciliation or forgiveness, but hope for justice. These people had hurt me, betrayed me, and tried to destroy me, but they'd also hurt innocent victims who deserved better. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. I pulled into my driveway and noticed something different. The house felt empty in a way it hadn't before, like the last traces of Vanessa's presence had finally evaporated. Her car wasn't there, her clothes were gone from the bedroom, and even her smell had faded from the air. For the first time in years, the house felt like mine again. I poured myself a bourbon, sat in my recliner, and started planning the final phase of my campaign. Tomorrow would be about public exposure and legal consequences. But tonight was about something more personal. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to Vanessa, Damian, and Trina. It was time to let them know that their victim was fighting back. To my dear wife and her associates, I began. By now, you've probably realized that your little conspiracy has been exposed. What you don't realize is that this is just the beginning. Tomorrow, the whole world will know what kind of people you really are. You wanted to destroy me? Congratulations, you've destroyed yourselves instead. Sleep well. Eli. I hit send and finished my bourbon. Tomorrow was going to be the best day I'd had in years. The business owner's breakfast was held every month at the Harborview Hotel in the same ballroom where Vanessa had been planning to celebrate her Realtor of the Year award next week. The irony wasn't lost on me. I arrived early, wearing my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of documents. The room was already filling up with the usual suspects: local business owners, real estate agents, and various civic leaders. Damian was at the head table, looking nervous, but trying to maintain his usual arrogant demeanor. Vanessa was there too, sitting with her real estate colleagues and pretending everything was normal. She'd done something different with her makeup, trying to cover what looked like stress lines and sleepless nights. Trina was conspicuously absent. I took a seat in the back, where I could see everyone and everything. Pete Morrison was there too, officially off duty, but wearing his "I'm a cop" expression that made people nervous. The breakfast proceeded normally for the first hour. There were announcements about upcoming events, recognition for various achievements, and the usual small-town business networking. Then it was time for Damian's presentation on ethical business practices in the digital age. He stood up, adjusted his tie, and launched into what was obviously a prepared speech about integrity, trust, and community responsibility. The audience listened politely, taking notes and nodding at appropriate moments. That's when I stood up. "Excuse me," I said, loud enough to be heard throughout the room. "I have a question about ethics." Damian paused, looking annoyed. Questions are usually taken at the end of the presentation. "This can't wait," I replied, pulling out my phone. "I'm curious about your thoughts on Ponzi schemes, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit assault." The room went dead silent. Damian's face went white, and I could see Vanessa shrinking in her chair. "I don't know what you're talking about," Damian said, but his voice was shaking. "Really? Let me refresh your memory." I pressed play on my phone, and Damian's voice filled the room through the hotel's sound system. "Once we get the insurance money from the marina, accident, we can disappear to the Cayman Islands. I've already got the account set up." The reaction was immediate and explosive. People started talking all at once, chairs scraped as people turned to stare, and I could see phones coming out to record everything. But I wasn't done. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet the real Damian Kemp, not the successful entrepreneur you think you know, but a criminal who's stolen nearly $2 million from elderly investors." I had their attention now. The room was completely focused on me, and I could see Damian frantically looking around for an exit. "For the past 6 months, Mr. Kemp has been running a cryptocurrency Ponzi scheme, taking money from new investors to pay fake returns to earlier victims. He's also been planning to defraud my business insurance company by staging an accident at my marina." I pulled out a stack of documents and held them up. I have bank records, email communications, and recorded conversations proving everything I've said. I've already turned this evidence over to the FBI, the SEC, and the State Attorney General's office. Damian tried to interrupt. This is harassment. This man is mentally unstable. He's been stalking me and my... Your what, Damian? Your girlfriend? You mean my wife? The room erupted again. Everyone knew about the parade incident yesterday, but hearing it confirmed in this setting made it real in a different way. Yes, Damian has been having an affair with my wife, Vanessa Graves, who is also here this morning. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that they've been planning to frame me for domestic abuse as part of an elaborate scheme to steal my assets and destroy my reputation. I played another recording, this one of Vanessa and Trina discussing how to fake injuries and create false evidence. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Mrs. Graves, I continued, turning to face my wife, would you like to explain to these good people how you were planning to stage photographs of fake bruises? Or how you gave confidential information about my business to your boyfriend so he could plan his insurance fraud? Vanessa stood up, her face red with rage and humiliation. You bastard! You can't do this! This is private information. Actually, it's evidence of criminal activity, which makes it very much public information, especially when it involves fraud, conspiracy, and attempted theft. That's when Pete Morrison stood up and showed his badge. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Detective Morrison with the State Police. Mr. Graves has been cooperating with our investigation into these matters, and I can confirm that formal charges are being filed. The room exploded into chaos. People were shouting questions, Damian was trying to push his way toward the exit, and Vanessa was screaming about lawyers and lawsuits. But I had one more surprise. Before anyone leaves, I announced, I want you to know that everything I've discussed this morning is documented on a website that went live about an hour ago. The address is justiceforeli.com, and it contains all the evidence, all the recordings and testimonials from the victims of these crimes. I could see people already pulling out their phones, typing in the web address. Within minutes, the truth would be spreading across social media, email, and text messages throughout the community. Damian made it to the door, but he was met by 2 FBI agents who'd been waiting in the hallway. They arrested him on the spot, reading him his rights, while a room full of business leaders watched in stunned silence. Vanessa tried a different approach. She walked over to me, tears streaming down her face, and tried to grab my hands. Eli, please, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Don't destroy our marriage over this. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved for 12 years, who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my trust. Then I gently removed her hands from mine. Vanessa, our marriage ended the moment you decided to betray me. Everything that's happened since then has just been the paperwork. But I love you. I've always loved you. No, you loved what I could provide for you. The house, the lifestyle, the security. You never loved me, because if you had, you never could have done what you did. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing, while her former colleagues looked on with a mixture of pity and disgust. Her career in real estate was over. No one would trust her with their biggest investment after this. As people started filing out of the room, many of them stopped to shake my hand or pat me on the shoulder. These were my neighbors, my customers, people who'd known me for years. They'd seen the evidence, heard the truth, and drawn their own conclusions. Eli, said Bob Henderson, who owned the hardware store, I want you to know that a lot of us suspected something wasn't right. We should have said something sooner. It's not your fault, Bob. These people were very good at hiding who they really were. Well, they're not hiding anymore. And if there's anything you need, anything at all, you just let us know. Similar conversations happened throughout the morning. The community was rallying around me not because they felt sorry for me, but because they respected how I'd handled the situation. I hadn't gotten violent, hadn't broken any laws, hadn't stooped to their level. I'd simply exposed the truth and let justice take its course. By noon, the hotel ballroom was empty, except for me, Pete, and a few FBI agents finishing their paperwork. Damian was on his way to federal custody. Vanessa had disappeared with her lawyer, and Trina had apparently fled town entirely. "You know," Pete said, "in 20 years of police work, I've never seen anything quite like this. You took down an entire criminal conspiracy without throwing a single punch. Sometimes the pen really is mightier than the sword. What's next for you?" I thought about that question as we walked out of the hotel together. What was next? For the first time in months, I had no idea, and that felt liberating. "I think I'm going to take a vacation," I said finally. "Maybe go fishing. I hear the base are running good up north." "That sounds perfect. You've earned it." As I drove back to the marina, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the peace of resignation or defeat, but the peace that comes from knowing you fought the good fight and won. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls and messages from reporters, lawyers, and curious neighbors, but I ignored them all. The story would tell itself now. The evidence was public, the criminals were in custody, and justice was being served. At the marina, Big Mike was waiting for me with a cold beer and a huge grin. "Boss, I've been watching the news. They're calling you a hero." "I'm not a hero, Mike. I'm just a guy who got tired of being lied to." "Well, whatever you want to call it, you've got half the town wanting to buy you drinks and the other half wanting to hire you as their private investigator." I laughed, imagining myself as some kind of small-town detective. "I think I'll stick to fixing boats. It's more honest work. Speaking of which, we've got about 20 new customers who want to bring their boats here. Seems like people trust a man who stands up for himself." That evening, I sat on my dock, watching the sunset over the harbor. My phone had finally stopped buzzing, the reporters had gone home, and the town was settling into its normal rhythm. Tomorrow, Vanessa would start dealing with criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and the complete destruction of her reputation. Damian would be fighting federal fraud charges and facing decades in prison. Trina would eventually be caught and prosecuted for identity theft and conspiracy. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was simply at peace. The truth had set me free, and justice had been served. 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 Served.